So AMD stock is down around 25% at the time of this recording. And this is after a huge tech correction where a lot of tech stocks got hit, but AMD in particular got hit even harder than the average. Now, a lot of you guys bought into the stock at around $10. A lot of you guys bought into the stock at around $30. And at the time of recording this video, we're sitting right around the middle of that at around $20 per share. And what I think is going to happen very soon is that we're going to have a pretty massive move in the stock, either to the upside or downside. So let's go through more details on the stock, what the reason was for this drop, why I think the stock is going to move either massively to the upside or downside, and how I'm playing this. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you're an investor in AMD, let me know in the comment section down below. I'm curious to see how many of my viewers are actually AMD investors. So AMD did come out and report their Q3 earnings on October 24th, and results were fairly mixed to say the least. We can see here that EPS came in at around 13 cents per share versus 12 cents per share expected. So we had a very narrow beat here. But revenue was around 1.65 billion versus 1.7 billion expected. So we had kind of a narrow loss here. But the good thing about this was that we did have around a 4.4% growth in revenue year over year. Now the big reason for this miss and what helped contribute to this miss was the GPU division, which in 2017 had massive amount of growth, and that was because of Bitcoin and blockchain. If you guys remember, 2017 Bitcoin was all the hype. Everyone was buying these graphic chips so that they could go mine Bitcoin and other things like Ethereum, Ripple, etc. And in 2018, this has kind of been a fad that's died out slowly, and as a result, there's been less sales with this. So AMD is actually one of those companies that actually benefited from this in 2017, but is now getting hit by this in 2018. But now the biggest reason that I think that the stock dropped was because of its guidance. So AMD came out and gave a guidance of around 1.45 billion for the next quarter versus what analysts were expecting at around 1.6 billion for the next quarter. So this is again a larger miss, and guidance is very important for some of these tech stocks. And to have a guidance miss like this, it does affect its stock price. But there was some good news that came out of this earnings, and that was that they did reduce their debt by around 100 million. So as we can see here from this chart, they have been working on reducing their debt pretty much every single quarter, and it's significantly lower than it was, say, 2 years ago. And this is a good sign for long-term shareholders in this stock in AMD. And that's because they are focusing on lowering their debt. Now when interest rates are rising, they're going to have to pay that debt at higher interest rates. So it is important that they lower that debt as soon as possible. Now, as we know for most stocks when they report earnings, except for some exceptions, which look at subscriber numbers and stuff, there are three things that analysts, investors, and pretty much anyone who's looking at the stock considers. The first is EPS, the second is revenue, and the third, of course, is guidance. Now, in this case, we actually had a miss on two of these three, which were revenue and guidance. And even though we did have a beat on EPS, it was a very narrow beat, which did not give investors a lot of hope and a lot of positive sentiment moving forward. So as a result, what happened? AMD took a pretty hard hit, and after reporting these earnings, their stock was down somewhere around 13% after hours. Now the bad news doesn't end there for AMD, unfortunately, and that is because it is a semiconductor stock, and if you've been following the semiconductor industry recently, you've noticed that pretty much every single semi stock has been hit. Even high flyers previously like Micron and Nvidia have been hit massively recently. And this is because semiconductors are seen as a more cyclical industry and cyclical type stocks, which is why they've kind of peaked in most investors' minds, and now they're kind of going down lower, which AMD is following suit as well. Now, although the cyclical nature of semiconductor stocks does not directly affect AMD, it's more affecting the stocks like Micron and Applied Materials, AMD does get affected because it is bunched with these stocks and it does follow this industry. So now we can see that AMD really has two things going against it. The first is that it had weak earnings and weak guidance, and the second is that it has the whole semiconductor industry dropping right now, which is also causing a lot of selling pressure on the stock. Now, analysts are still fairly bullish on this, as you can see here, with over a 25% upside that they see. And if you want to see more about this or read more about this, I will leave a link in the description below to AMD stock on TipRanks. But anyways, all of this pretty much brings us to today, which is where AMD is sitting at around 25% down in 1 month. So looking at the chart today here, we can see that AMD is sitting around some long-term support, and it has a gap to fill at around $22.50 or so, which coincides with the 100-day moving average as well. So I expect this to be some pretty decent resistance in the stock because it is below that level right now. Now looking at the downside of this, if we fall below the support, which is also the 200-day moving average, I expect us to enter the same channel that we were back in 2017, which is between around $10 and $15 per share. But either way, I believe because of this, because of all the volatility we've been seeing in the market and how AMD is such a volatile stock, we will see a pretty big move, in my opinion, in AMD, either to the upside or downside. Keep in mind, AMD is a momentum stock, so once it gets moving, usually a lot of investors hop on, and it continues that move very strongly until there is some catalyst out there that can break that trend. But that being said, if the market does continue to be weak now with a lot of these midterm election catalysts and other catalysts coming up, then we will see AMD suffer as well, in my opinion. But on the other hand, if the market does rebound and start showing sign of strength, I think AMD will show even more strength and move even higher than expected. So now I'm sure you guys are curious, how am I playing this stock? Well, I did disclose this trade to my VIP group last week, so if you're interested in joining, interested in seeing all the trades that I make, I'll leave a link in the description as well. But either way, this is how I'm playing AMD moving forward. So pretty much what I've done is I've opened up two positions. The first is a call position, the second is a put position. They're both expiring in December 2018, December 21st to be specific. And I picked up the $26 call strike, and I picked up the $12 put strike. Now the reason that I'm playing this with calls and puts as opposed to shares is because I'm not really bullish on AMD for the long term. Fundamentally, I'm not really a strong believer in this company. I'm more of an Intel and Nvidia investor. So I don't want to be stuck holding this company long term with shares. I'm also expecting a big move in the near term future. And if I hold shares, it doesn't really benefit me if the stock moves down. So by holding options with both calls and puts, I am kind of playing both sides of this. My logic here is that since I do believe that there is going to be a big move, no matter if we move higher or lower with these calls and puts, I will make money either way, in my opinion, as long as the stock doesn't continue just moving sideways. If it does that, then I will lose out on this position. So this is kind of a riskier trade, and I would be looking to play this with something like vertical spreads typically, so there is lower risk. But since these options are fairly cheap, I figured I might as well go in and kind of play it in a way that gives me quite a bit of upside. But keep in mind, this is pretty much a speculative play for me. I don't want you guys to follow this play because it is something that I'm just speculating on. This is not an investment. This is kind of like a gamble, if you want to call it, because it is options and I am kind of making a bet on the stock moving big in the next few weeks. So if you are looking to make a similar play, just keep in mind that this is a very high risk play, in my opinion. So whether you got into AMD at around $10 and you're up 100% on your position, or you got into AMD at around $30 something and you're down around 50% on your position, I hope that this video gave you a bit more insight as to why the stock has been going down in the last month or so. So after watching this video, if you still believe in the fundamentals of AMD, then this may be a perfect gift, perfect opportunity to load up on some more shares at a correction in the stock. But if you are more of a fundamental value investor, I know that AMD is definitely not on that list. So maybe this just brings the stock a little bit closer to a potential for you adding more shares at a later date. But either way, whether you're a fan of the stock or not, let me know in the comment section down below if you are an AMD shareholder. And also let me know what your prediction is for AMD to end the year off in 2018. I'm kind of curious to see what the general sentiment is around this stock with my viewers. But either way, guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Drop a huge like if you did. Don't forget to subscribe and don't forget to invest positively.